You could be Dracul Son. Perfect. Hello, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and on my right-hand side is my right-hand man, Gabriel. He's a little tired out. Daddy's been doing interviews all day. I've got 8 interviews today, and you, my good sir, are interview number 7, so here we go.
Well,
Yeah. Today on the Rock and Roll Podcast, we have Mike LePond's Silent Assassins, and he has a new album called Whore of Babylon, which was released on June 26th via Silver Lining Music. Right now I'm being joined by Mike himself to share more information about his assassins, although I'm not really quite sure you're allowed to say too much, otherwise they wouldn't be silent assassins anymore.
Yeah, well, let's talk about everything. Let's become the unsilent assassins today.
Beautiful. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Now, it seems like this is quite the concept because, you know, it's not just silent assassins, it's, you know, it's your silent assassin, so it kind of is this idea of maybe like a gang or whatever, and then we've got the album called Whore of Babylon, and I'm taken back to maybe even something as simple, well, this is simple, but maybe the Maccabees, who actually had assassins going through and taking out the Greeks to free Israel, and, you know, where modern-day Babylon would be in, what is it, Iran? This whole idea of assassins coming in and trying to do the part of freeing people from whatever they need to be freed from. And so, I mean, is this a concept? Not just a concept album, but almost an entire concept as a band, too?
Well, the band name came about, it had like 2 separate meanings. I guess the first meaning was, you know, this was a solo project, and I would have all these players that I would get, you know, and they would be like my assassins, my, you know, heavy metal musician assassins. But also...
I thought it was funny. It's cool, but it's funny.
Right, and then in a historical perspective, on my very first album, I had a song called Silent Assassins, and that was about the Trojan War. And I referred to the Silent Assassins as the Greek warriors who were hiding inside the wooden horse. And that was that whole thing. So there was like a double meaning, and it felt good. It feels good to say. You got the 2 S's going on, so I was really happy with that whole title and concept.
Yeah, abso-freaking-lutely. Now, something that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, though, was one of the tracks we're going to chat about today is called Dracul Son, and that sounds a bit like... Well, Dracula. My understanding is Dracula actually means son of Dracul. And is this a song then about Vlad Stepic, the Romanian dictator / tyrant? Or
yes, it is.
Okay.
I could tell you are a major student of history, and so yes, this is about Vlad the Impaler, and and ever since I first heard about this guy, you know, he was a very intriguing figure, you know, and I said, wow, it would be great to write a song about this guy because he was such a brutal guy, and yet, you know, in his country, he's thought of as a hero, you know, and I thought it would be a great thing to write about, and so I wrote this song really dark, and it came out. You know, it came out so good that I decided to lead the album off with it.
Yeah, I guess one of my next questions is, what was it about the track that became such a focus track for the album?
Well, I think at the time, I usually, when I write an album, I kind of go with, like, the flow of the album is so important to me, you know. I really want everybody to start from the beginning and go to the end. So usually when I start the album, I have something fast. And it was just around the time where I was saying to myself, okay, I need like a fast kind of thrash power metal track, you know. So I came up with this riff, and I just happened to, you know, I had these lyrics first. This is one of those times where the lyrics were written first. And I just started to sing something to myself, And I was like, oh, that would fit perfect. And then it just all kind of came together, you know. And that's how a lot of these songs come together. I just try to sing some lines to myself and see how it works. And then, you know, it's just all trial and error. But at the end of the day, it felt really good. Since I knew the song was going to be about Vlad the Impaler, I made it as dark as I could, you know. And that's
but he's a national hero, Mike.
I know. That's what's so intriguing to me, because, you know, he fought the enemy, and he really fought for his country. But on the other hand, I guess the media depicts him as this, you know, madman, and I guess he is a madman for, you know, for what he did. But you know, he really inspired me to write. So you know, that's definitely one of the up-tempo kind of rockin' tunes on the album.
Yeah, and I'm curious, you mentioned that the concept of Vlad the Impaler inspired you to write a song about it, and I know that you mentioned that you had written something really quite dark, but since he's kind of shrouded in almost a dichotomy of characters, is he, like, for example, I introduced him initially as just a tyrant and a dictator, based on what I understand, you know, of him. But at the same time, like, my mom's side of the family is Romanian, and you know, also as well is he's kind of held in this regard of, like, man, he kept national security and the economy, and you know, which way do we look at the guy, sort of thing. And it kind of almost reminds me of a modern day, I don't know if there's a direct parallel, but when I went to Russia, something that I discovered was there are people who wish that Stalin was still around. And I'm flabbergasted, like, Stalin of all people? Really? You want that guy? Like, well, he brought Russia out of the bush. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have the ability to read and write and be an educated society and go into space and all these things. And so it's almost kind of interesting, like, from which perspective do you look at somebody? And I guess I'm curious, when you were inspired to write a song about Vlad the Impaler, which perspective did you take? Do you try all sides of the argument, or is it more just the darker side of the argument?
Well, I put like 75% of the song talks about some of the, you know, sick things he did, you know, impaling, and, you know, and all the other crazy things he did. But then I put in like the bridge of the song, I read that, you know, he tried to get redemption because he was a Christian as well, and he built many churches and things like that. And I just kind of put the question out there in the song, you know, do you think building all these churches and abbeys will save your soul? You know, I just put like a little thing like that. But I focused on the dark side of him because, you know, I guess it was a heavy metal song, so I got to talk about the darker stuff, right?
Well, that's a really interesting point, because, you know, we've got the darker side, obviously, of this political character, and then the Whore of Babylon herself, whoever she is that also focusing on potentially a darker side of something that may have gone on in Babylon? Yeah,
now that whole idea was from the Book of Revelation, right? So I just happened to see a documentary on it. You know, I like to watch documentaries because I'm not a very good reader. You know, I can't comprehend what I read very well, so I like to watch documentaries. So they talked about the Whore of Babylon, and you know, and it seems like sometimes it's depicted as a woman, sometimes it's depicted as Rome, you know, and and other things. But I thought, what if we had this, you know, I just took this right from the Book of Revelation, where this evil woman tempts you and takes you back to hell with her, you know, and she rides this 7-horned, 10-headed beast, and she's got this gold cup filled with evil in it. And I was like, wow. So, and then, but you know what? The funny thing is, you would assume this is going to be some like super heavy metal song. I decided to make it not even a heavy metal song. I made it this Middle Eastern kind of belly dancer kind of track, and there's not even guitar in it. There's just there's a 4-string bass, an 8-string bass, and some keyboards, and it's real Middle Eastern kind of, I don't know if sexy is the word, but kind of tempting, because I was trying to think of, what kind of a song to write for that a woman would appear and tempt a man and he would follow her to hell. So that was the whole thing. That was probably one of my favorite songs to do, because when you don't write a heavy metal song, you kind of got to be careful, because the heavy metal purists might get mad. So you gotta try to come up with something cool.
It turns out you're the beast, and you're trying to take them into the hell of not heavy metal.
Right, so it's sometimes a lot of the metal purists don't like it when you take when you experiment. So
yeah, well, it sounds like it was a conscious decision to maybe parlay on some musical elements on the record that are not strictly heavy metal, and I guess you kind of just mentioned there that you might run into some issues with that, but is it something that you really obviously felt pretty confident in it?
Yeah, not many people know this about me, but I'm a huge fan of Blackmore's Night, and I've been a fan for probably 15 years or so. And I listen to them all the time, and they have these Celtic kind of songs, these medieval songs, and then they have these real Middle Eastern kind of dancey songs, and that really had a huge influence on me. So these 3 albums that I put out, in some songs there are these kind of Celtic kind of songs, and even on this on this new record, the title track "Whore of Babylon" is definitely one of those songs. And then there's another song called "Night of the Long Knives," which is kind of almost like a Celtic rock song, and it's not about when Hitler was taking out his enemies, that Night of the Long Knives. I just happened to come across something. You just come across these things out of nowhere. I had no idea. There was supposedly, whether it happened or not, an original Night of the Long Knives that I did not know about. And it happened in just after the Roman Empire fell in Britain, and you had the Britons and the Saxons, and they had this feast. One group told the other that, we want to make peace and we want to have this feast. And then of course, one group thought it was for real, and then the other group had a planned attack. So they kill the other tribe. So I kind of wrote a song about that, and I made it more, since it was in ancient Britain, I made it more of a Celtic feel with a mandolin, and some rock guitar. And so I do that from time to time, because I love playing heavy metal, but I think during an album it's cool to take a little break.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that one. Now, one of the other tracks we were going to chat about today is Telltale Heart, and I'm curious, Mike, what is the story of the Telltale Heart?
Well, Telltale Heart is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, and I love Edgar Allan Poe. And like I was saying before, I'm not a great reader, but I could read a short story. You know what I mean? If it's 700 pages, I probably couldn't handle it. But a lot of Edgar Allan Poe stuff is short stories, and gets to the point really fast, and of course it's great horror. And it really puts imagery in your head. So I wanted to with this song, I wanted to almost like write down the lyrics as it's like a story, and kind of put the music to it. And it was a lot of fun to do. It's one of the longer tracks on the record. It's about 6 minutes or so. And, again, because it's a dark story, I put some real dark elements in it. A lot of cool jamming, a lot of dissonant kind of playing, and but always a big chorus that you could kind of sing along to. So that's probably definitely one of my favorites. So I hope your audience will check that one out, and I hope they like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for those who are interested in the tracks, Dracul Son and Telltale Heart will be known that there's part of an album called Whore of Babylon that we've been chatting about, which was released on June 26th via Silver Lining Music. And we've been chatting quite a bit about it. It seems like there's quite a breadth of topics on the record, and even musically there seems to be quite the breadth of instrumentation styles and whatnot. And so I guess, because it all sounds like a cohesive package to me, my question, Mike, is when you sat down to write Whore of Babylon, I guess my question is, what did you want to compile together? And I've also noted that it was recorded between various tours with Symphony X, so it seems like it's been in the making for quite some time.
Yeah, since Symphony X is the band I'm in, usually on tour, there's a lot of downtime. Really all you have to do is show up for sound check and then show up to play, and literally that's it. So there's a lot of time, so I spent a lot of time just kind of like working on some lyrics, and by the time I was actually going to go forth and do the record, I just had a bunch of lyrics around, and I just happened to, oh boy, now someone else is calling in. I'm going to just get rid of that. Okay, here we go. Okay. Anyway, so I just had all these lyrics lying around, and there wasn't any specific kind of lyrics or any kind of idea that I wanted to get across on the album. I just had all these stories. I'm the type of person, I don't really like to write songs about, like, girls or that kind of thing. I like, stuff with substance, stuff, epic stories from history, mythology, or literature. And so I had these laying around, and then I just started putting music to them, and that's how it kind of came across. And, I do these albums when I have time during the Symphony X tours or whatever else I'm doing. But it just comes out the way it comes out. There's no specific plan, and none of the albums are concept albums, but each song has its own concept. So I guess each song would be a concept song.
Okay. Very cool stuff, and it sounds like there's definitely some very deep concepts as well that are going to be on the record. Now, normally, speaking of those tours that happen, normally that's what would be happening right about now in the summertime to promote the record, but something happened. I'm not really quite sure what, Mike.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because I had just moved into a new home, like in the first week of March, and I was like, well, you know what? No problem, because, I got a Symphony X tour coming up in, I got a Ross the Boss tour coming up in April. I got a Symphony X tour coming up in May. I've got European festivals with Symphony X. I'm going to have a lot of money coming in. And then, boom, out of nowhere, the virus hits, and the tours are just all scrapped. And I'm like, okay, this is good. So I really got hammered, and all these tours got postponed. So now I try to find the silver lining in all this. The good news is they're postponed and not canceled, so that's good. So we're hoping the Ross the Boss tour can happen in November in Europe, and Symphony X is rescheduled for. We got tours coming in February and March. And also, with all the time I have by myself, besides eating too much, I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of songs for another solo album for the future. So I try to take the good with the bad and do the best I can with it.
Absolutely. All right, now Mike, unless there's anything else that you wanted to throw out there that maybe I did not bring up, such as any news of maybe what's been going on while we've been locked down, or some news we might expect aside from the record release itself. But other than that, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast.
Thank you very much, John. I mean, right now, I've got some tours planned for the future. So, fingers crossed they are all going to happen. And, I'm just pushing forward, remaining positive. And I want to say thank you to your listeners for checking this out. And please check out my new album, Whore of Babylon, on Silver Lining Music. And the band is called Mike LePond's Silent Assassins. We're on all the social media. Just search us and you'll find us. And thank you again.